What if? Isn't that more fun than me saying that that's the way it is? I do not do Walter Cronkite impersonations. You have to see for yourself. What if life, in a very particular way, uses man as a partial mirror, as a sounding board? You should keep in mind partial mirror, because then I can turn all this back, as always, back into an individual, back to a level that you can see within yourself. If you got the ability to split your consciousness into three parts, you can see, indeed, there is a partnership in you, and indeed it seems at any time that there is a distinct interest in what's going on your part, that the partnership is always, to some degree, in conflict. They never operate, the partnership does not operate in unison. If it operates in unison, you don't even notice it. That'd be the times that if I suddenly jumped out of the bushes, out of your closet and said, all right, you see the partnership, you see right now that I told you the truth, and that there you sit with your feet up, and the bluebird of happiness is singing outside your window, and you just got up, and your mind and everything is almost a blank, and you really looked, you could say, of course I should have the wherewithal not to jump out at that particular time because I'd recognize it, that you could look, and it's like, wait a minute, the partnership took a break. It's off duty. That's the closest it would be to be any sort of unison, that they would be operating in concert. It has to be that which seems to be going on that's of no particular molecular interest. If anything is of interest, there is to some degree a conflict going on. The partnership is never operating in complete concert. You could see the partnership. Remember, the partnership I speak of as both a noun and a verb. Not you in the partnership, the partnership. You can see the partnership in you as being a partial mirror, not a mirror. It does not reflect everything about you. It is a partial mirror. In the same way, humanity does not reflect everything if man were to laugh the other part of its partnership, as I was asking you. If it were true, humanity would not be giving a complete mirror to life. If any of you can see this is one reason that life, going into another dimension, going at right angles, would have no real interest in man's religion. Life couldn't learn anything from it. Life could not learn anything from man's scientific truths, because to do so, it would have to be an absolute reflection of something, and it's always going to be a partial reflection. So anytime, if anybody could follow that path for a second, anytime that apparently the ordinary partnership talks to you, such as you're reading, you hear somebody make a statement, God is good. Let's all wear CARP uniforms. And the partnership says, I agree with that. It just strikes the partnership immediately. That's a fact, Jack. As I've told you before, you can count on this. It ain't a fact. As long as the ordinary partnership is absolutely convinced of anything, you can be, one of the few times in your ordinary life, you can be absolutely convinced that it's wrong. Because that would be a perfect mirror of something. And the partnership in you is not a perfect mirror. If it were, everybody would know everything, right? So if life indeed is acting as the other part of the partnership to life itself, if humanity is, what I wanted you to see was, when I asked this, the second rhetorical question of the evening, is it possible that humanity is acting as a partial mirror? But you cannot look to the partnership to be an absolute, to be a perfect reflection of anything. Another part of that same general question, is it possible that life is operating as a sounding board? You can see the partnership. Perhaps you can see that fairly simply, that in a sense, it's like people talking to themselves. We're talking about individuals now, you, not life. It's like somebody saying, I wonder if I can jump from this bank to the other without falling in the water. I wonder if I can hit that sucker and knock him down before he hits me. I wonder if I can pick up this thing and stick it in my pocket without the store detective seeing me. I wonder if I can tell my wife, my girlfriend, the car broke down again. You know, that's it. The car broke down. And the only phone I could get to wasn't working. Yeah, it wasn't working. That was it. It's sort of like ordinary people would say, talking to oneself. Will this fly? Can I make this work? Will somebody buy this program? Will somebody accept this down-laden canard? All right, in that same sense, can you see? Could you, right quick, I'm not going to detail it, could you even see some of the so-called upheavals, some of the bouncing arounds of history, some of the times that apparently, from certain human viewpoints, that humanity has gone temporarily mad, that large segments of life have seemed to have jumped off into some direction that was self-destructive. And no matter that you may have had a choir of Cassandras around, some way it always bounces back. The prime example, even look at the Germans, no matter how often they run against the wall and put their little heads down and run. All you got to do is give them a decade or so, and their gross national product is back right in the top 3, just to give you one example. But inside of you, that kind of sounding, that kind of talking to oneself, that kind of musing, that kind of pondering, that kind of what if, can any of you see? Because I've already told you in the past that life will try anything once. If there's anything you can think of, the only reason you can think of it is that somebody tried it, or you wouldn't know anything about it. But can any of you see that certain, and this is not, it's not certainly limited to this, but I was just going to try to use a strong example of certain of the things that would almost seem to be inexplicable. Why would life let this sort of thing happen? Or your forefathers would say, why would the gods let this kind of thing happen? Can you see humanity operating as a kind of sounding board? But of course everybody takes it personally. Well, the Germans have overrun us again. The Norwegians are laying down in front of our freight trains again. Somebody's doing something. And here it is, apparently overt behavior. It's not thinking about acting, it's acting. But can any of you run off another right angle and move up to the level of life? So is it all possible? And just try and picture the crudest sense that some of humanity's actions could be seen not to life as acting, but life thinking about acting. Life pondering what if, and it ponders what if, and suddenly millions of humans go and in its own sweet time, which may be several seconds to life, and it might be a decade to humanity, it goes, nah, hell with it. Things bounce off in another direction. The human molecules wander around, they remember it, they argue over it, they write books about it. If you could jump outside the system and get life's attention and say, good grief, do you realize that X amount of hundreds of thousands of people lost their lives in their homes and got their clothes all muddy and hurt themselves, and it seems to be to no avail? And I've got some suggestion. I heard a guy talking some years back, and he seemed to be hinting like some of this could have been you just thinking about acting and never did anything, and it made us act. Do you realize what you did just by wondering that? And life would go, huh? Can you remember what you were pondering this afternoon at 4 o'clock? Can you remember the last time you were faced with a small problem at home trying to fix a faucet, a light fixture, do a piece of carpentry work, and you wondered, well, I don't have the materials, I can't do this, could I jerry-rig this and make it work? And it seemed to be fairly pressing at the time. Can you tell me what you thought? Can you tell me the possibilities that you pondered? Can you tell me which ones that you remembered? The answer is no. But think about your molecules. Think about what banged around in you. How about a third part? Can any of you see the possibility that the partnership, let's start off with you internally, an individual, could be seen as a reflection of the two princes' royal collusion? That couldn't fit in what I was just talking about, right? Because I pointed out if there's enough going on inside of you for you to be able to be aware that, yeah, there is some kind of continuing partnership, some kind of small conflict, some kind of binary arrangement inside of me almost all the time. There's always to some degree, some sort of conflict going on if whatever's going on is of enough interest for you even to be aware of it. If that's true, then it certainly couldn't be fitted into any kind of collusion, right? If you say, right, you and your partnership, but you're worse than the partnership, it's you and the partnership, you got a real short memory. If you remember what I speculated to you, what I asked you to consider the possibilities of these two princes apparently in continuing conflict, simmering or overt, and then pointed out to you that they are continually also meeting and planning all of this. Could anybody see that within each individual, without their knowledge, of course, I don't guess I've mentioned that in several years to you latecomers, what if the partnership is some kind of reflection of a royal collusion between two princes? Instead of an amen corner, since this is not a Baptist church, we need, I think, perhaps a partnership corner, where those at any given night feel as though you are most likely to fall into the hands not of Lucifer, not of demons of darkness, but of your own partnership, is to have a partnership corner wherein when I reach a salient, if not cogent point, I can look and somebody say, not amen, but say partnership. Somebody pant, somebody moan, somebody slap their forehead. How could it be a collusion going on? How could it possibly be a collusion? That which seems to be me internally and that which seems to be not me are at such, most of the time, at least when I notice it, there are at such loggerheads. There's never any peace. In fact, at night, some nights I can't go to sleep. And I used to think about it as being other things, but I can see in a sense it's the partnership. As I lay there planning what's going to happen tomorrow. But in a sense, it's the partnership doing it. Well, when you get there, they're going to say, are you prepared? And you say yes. And as soon as I start, they're going to say, you call that prepared? Wait a minute, let's stop this. And I'm going to walk in, they're going to say, oh, you came instead of the other people. Or else I'll get up and I'll get ready, I'll start getting ready, and I'll do some exercise, and I'll take a shower. And, what if I leave at 8:30? I'm supposed to be there at 10. And what if there's a big wreck and I can't even get there? What if I really get stuck in traffic and I'm so far between exits I can't even get to a phone to call? I could lose my job, lose the whole deal. The partnership can say, well, that's reasonable for somebody to lay around and do that. But you can look at it another way if you see it correctly. If you could deal with life with a single stroke, if you had a blade the likes of which would make Excalibur look dull, you would simply decide what to do and you would do it. And you would do it on the basis of your own best interest, and you would very seldom, I can't call for perfection if we want to get into that, that is absolute success, but as a rule, what you intend to do, you could do. You'd get there on time. So looked at from a certain viewpoint, if you can follow me, it is the partnership at work. Looked at from another viewpoint, as I've also noted, or asked you at least, life would not operate without the partnership. Ordinary people wouldn't operate. But how could it possibly be a collusion? Asked someone in the partnership corner. And I say to you, how could it be otherwise? Where'd the partnership come from? Unless you're going to fall back upon some kind of binary stories that are even past Acme's, because they're not even apparently correct. That is, that there is good and evil, and in some way it's outside our system, such as the gods being outside the system, and then the anti-gods. The villains of the real gods. The partnership came from somewhere. And unless, as I said, you were still backward enough that you could believe that the partnership, some part of the partnership came from the lower regions, from some desperate area that they imported on flying saucers or meteorites from some other universe, crashed through black and white and checkerboard holes, and suddenly came here on this planet and infected everyone with a partnership. Unless you're going with some scenario such as that, then I ask you, secondly, after I ask you first, how could this possibly be, or could it be a partnership? A partnership be a royal collusion? And somebody over here in the partnership corner said, no, it's not possible. Then I ask, how could it be otherwise? That's where we're back to. They all came from somewhere. Yeah, but part of me is just not up to snuff. Part of me is just not whipped into line yet. Where'd that part come from? In everyone's partnership, there's a feeling, no one's ever analyzed it because no one's ever even called it a partnership. But once I point out, everyone has a feeling with it. All right, inside of my partnership, one part of it is a Harvard graduate, literate, good-looking, stalwart, honest, faithful, carries brandy around his neck, and on the other hand, his partner is an illiterate, atheistic, antagonistic, aggressive, ugly, smelly bum. I don't know, Bakersfield, Teaneck, Birmingham, somewhere. Of course, the latter part, all this Teaneck and Bakersfield and Alabama, would have to be from another universe. Another universe, not another planet. It would have to be outside this system. We'd have to have two laughs. And they'd have to come from somewhere else to be that kind of truly antagonistic part of a partnership. And yet everyone feels as though that part of me that does not operate in my best interest, that part of me that I cannot make get up in the morning and do everything I want it to do, that part of me that no matter after I swear that I'm going to quit smoking or drinking or eating white sugar, I'll turn right around. Not me. Not me, because I had my best interest at heart. I intended to do right. God knows I intended to do right, and something in me suddenly made me reach for a cigarette. Suddenly there I am having my, bring me another drink, bartender. And I realized I wasn't going to drink anymore. That in some way I wash my hands of this. Oh, it's in me. It's some sort of weakness. It's something I've got to overcome. And it is something that, in a certain way, is foreign to me. Because I know I should not be drinking, smoking, eating this. I know I should be getting exercise. And there's a part of me that has no interest in this. And that part of me is in some way foreign, outside my universe, outside this universe. You're back in the arms of everyday religion. Where are you going to look? You might as well be back with your forefathers and foreruncles. You might as well be even with Flip Wilson, wherever he is, to say, the devil made me do it. I suggest to you that there is a collusion going on. Forget about conspiratorial theories. There is some basis to conspiratorial theories in the binary world. That's people that can't see. That's just ordinary people that don't know what's going on. The reality behind conspiratorial theories would be, I suggest to you, if there was any, royal collusion. But remember, it's the two princes. How can you call that conspiratorial? It's the two guys in charge. I did make that plain enough to start with, didn't I? When I talk about two princes with adjoining kingdoms, the two adjoining kingdoms take up everything. How can you call that conspiratorial? I heard someone in the partnership corner moan again. Somebody rattling their worry beads. Or, sir, was that your brains you were rattling? I know I heard a noise. Could any of you see, for question number Cito, could any of you see the possibility that the partnership is a way on two levels, individual level and last level, that the partnership is a way to cut up the infinite comment Can any of you see the possibility that if the infinite comment were not going to be the absolute endless Bologna, that the partnership would have to be a nice big deli slicer? Or else there you would be, ordinary consciousness, and here the bologna would go by, and it would start, and you'd keep waiting to make a comment, have a bite, more discuss it, dress it up, put some mustard on it, take it away from where you saw it, share it with someone else, argue over it, dye it, chop it up, and it starts. Now you stand, you reach 15, 20, 35, 40, and the son of a bitch is still going by. And there's nowhere to get your hands on it. Of course, to carry this a little bit further in the binary world, if it were not for partnership, you wouldn't notice any of this anyway. You wouldn't have any complaint, because then you'd have to say, if there were no partnership, you'd never be hungry. But back to the real binary world. Can any of you see the possibility the partnership operates as a way to cut up the infinite baloney? That it's got to stop somewhere. You got to be able to deal with things if you're part of the ordinary. And all of us are part of the ordinary. To drive down here and see me and to see these tapes, to get your clothes cleaned, etc. You got to have that part of you that operates in the ordinary kingdoms. And to that degree, of course, you've got to cut up the infinite comments. You've got to deal with everyone else cutting it up. You've got to cut it up at the right time. When other people cut it up, you've got to hear how they cut it up. You've got to go, yeah or no. Pass the biscuits, I don't care. How's your mama and them? And hello, goodbye. You do all that. You do all that because you must wear clothes in public. But beyond that, who would take it seriously? That is the partnership. But you've got to see the possibility the partnership is the way of cutting up the infinite comment into agreeable, digestible, usable pieces. But now let's jump from you, from humans. Can anyone see life using its partnership based upon, you remember question 1.5, question 2, can you see the possibility of life being, or humanity being life's other part of its own partnership? So then can you see, back to where this question, number 5, can you see the possibility of man being life's way to cut up its own infinite comment into usable pieces? If any of you get a glimpse of that, then you understand all of history. Then you instantaneously understand everything that's going on. Even those things that you don't understand, you understand them. That it cut up something. It cut up a big piece of bologna that life needed cut down. They just wanted a snack. Maybe it just sliced it off and thought maybe it was going to take a bite and then laid it back down. Or it might have taken a bite and went, pooh, bologna again. It might have took a bite and got sick and threw up. Then you look around what goes on in life. How can this sort of thing happen? How can life make such blunders? Of course, ordinary people, they say, why does humanity continue to run this race of folly? Why can't humanity? Not me, because I see better, or else I couldn't make this observation, criticism. Why cannot humanity learn from its mistakes? There's the answer. Baloney. Because on a greater level, going at a right angle into another dimension, the possibility, I'm asking you, remember, one, of life being the other part of life's own internal partnership, and now this part of the partnership being a way in which life cuts up its own infinite comment into usable pieces. And on that basis, if you could see that, if there be any validity behind it, of all the many fits and starts, and otherwise, that life may seem to take, instead of blaming it upon the folly of humanity and humanity's inability to learn anything, you can see it as life, on this possibility I'm presenting to you, of life continually cutting up to its own partnership, the infinite comment into usable pieces, and that is part of humanity's purpose. Then what seems to be all the many faux pas, stumbles, inexplicable behaviors of individuals and masses of people become explicable. How could it have been otherwise? Life cut off a slice, decided it didn't want it. Life took off a slice, tasted it, spit it out. Life made itself a sandwich, and it never came back over to this part again. It's understandable to me. I understand it completely. Do it all the time. Done it all my life. Does the partnership corner find that to be an interesting series of possibilities? That was them, that was not me. Now we're talking about history. Does anyone recall back from if anyone's ever read it, one time I ran across something that they used back in the middle or later stages of the Middle Ages, I guess it was. It was known in the Anglo-Saxon world as Wergild. W-E-R-G-I-L-D, I believe. I didn't make this one up, by the way. As Casey Stengel would say, you can look it up. And it was a legal, or semi-legal at that time. It was a habit, which was the beginning of law. The Wergild was the price placed upon someone's life, and was based on and proved their social position and worth. The Wergild was, if man A killed man B, then under certain conditions, at certain times, rather than him being tried and put away or killed himself, he simply had to pay the estate, the family, the next of kin of man B a certain amount of money. But the Wergild was in some way in each community, they had to establish the worth of that person's life. And of course, if man B was simply a serf, much less a serfer, but if the man was just a peon, let's say his life was worth 2 or 3 pence. And of course, if he was a duke, we'd assume his life would be hundreds of pounds, thousands of pounds, shillings. And so it was proof of. It was even used sort of as a synonym, not a synonym, but a way to mention the Wergild on him would be astronomical. Don't get mad at him. You might tell some guy, you keep threatening to do him harm, think what the Wergild would be on Mr. B. You couldn't afford it. You can't kill him. So it's like making a statement, a local community statement on the social position and the worth of a person. Now, why in the world would I bring this up? Other than our combined innate love of arcane history. Well, I forgot. I just always wanted to say Wergild. I've never heard anybody say it. Wergild, Wergild. But all you people in the partnership corner, everybody say it together, Wergild. Now, believe it or not, there is sort of a reason I happen to think about that. I bet as some of you smart alecks already surmise, if that sort of thing happened in the apparently external world, the not I, out there, enough that some people remembered it for 400 or 500 years, enough people remembered it and wrote it down that I even ran across it and heard about it, assuming I hear about things by reading history books or books. If it had that much importance at one time, as some of you smart alecks should be jumping by now, there must be some way that could be used individually by me internally. Of course, it shows that you're not smart aleck enough. Because smart aleck enough is, it's already been done. It was already used. Just nobody ever put it in words before. Life had already used it through humanity. What happens when apparently, and I'm saying apparently without quotation marks, when apparently you have really undergone certain changes? Nothing to talk about, no need to talk about it. Those of you who are good even now understand you shouldn't talk about it. When you find that there seems to be, and I'm going to have to use this in a relative binary sense, there seems to be a certain kind of strength or ability develops in you in a certain area, and you find, all right, I can stop doing so and so, whether it be some physical habit, or you find that apparently I now have some sort of control, although I hadn't thought about it, over certain emotional conditions, or certain kinds of passionate responses, over certain kinds of non-productive imagination. I am getting better. No matter on Thursday night, sometimes he seems to kick change in the ass all over the universe. There ain't no doubt I am better off, not by anybody's definition, but mine, I feel it, I am better off than I was when I started this. I'm much better off than I was 4 or 5 months ago. I am not molecularly exactly the same person internally. It may seem in the beginnings to be more localized in certain circuits than in others, but then it's just a general feeling, and I'm saying feeling with no quotation marks. It's the surety that you know that there are now things that seem to be at one time very bad partnership habits, weaknesses, things that did me no good, not by anybody's definition, not by some religious standard, but I now have certain power. Again, that's relative because you're only aware of it after it happens. What price was paid to kill that? What was the wergill on what seems to be some weakness you had? Some proclivity that seemed to be less than profitable. Well, let's don't bandy words about. You start off, and the only way to describe it, you feel as though they're weaknesses. They're things that I should overcome. They're things in me that I should eradicate. Somewhere I got to pull myself together, find the ability to operate in a willful manner, and I've got to stop this. I'm just sure that if I could give up smoking or drinking, I'm just picking out crude things to start with. If I could force myself to get more exercise, I just know I'd be a better person. I just know if I could get over being so jealous, if I could just get over being so hostile. You look at it as being a weakness. Let's just quit trying to run around words and take it that way. All right, it looks like a weakness in the partnership. Not you in the partnership. Then you realize after the fact, this seems to no longer be my problem, this particular one. That's why I was saying relative when I used the term strength. Because the truth is, you cannot say, well, I have overcome this and I overcame it. I can tell you when. It was between 4:35 and 4:40, November the 26th. That's when it was, p.m. That's when I realized, wait a minute, I don't have to put up with this crap any longer. I have developed certain kinds of psychic strength, psychological wherewithal that I no longer am held by that. That's Looney Tune times. It's after the fact that you realize, hey, I don't want to do so-and-so anymore. It's as though this disappeared. All I got is a faint memory. All I got is the memory that I used to believe that this was a great weakness. It's not that you changed your mind when I say that you used to think it was a great weakness, but now it seems to be gone. I don't have the desire to do it. I don't even have the interest to do it. So, relatively speaking, it seems as though you've developed some strength. But relatively speaking, it seems as though something has been killed. Is there a wergild involved? Life couldn't be arranged that way. That's unfair. You mean if I do something that by everything I feel, and I'm not questioning it, remember. That's why I left off the quotation marks around weakness and feel as though that I am now, without a doubt, I'm in some way better. I am now more evolved. You mean there was a price? That's when you can tell that you've made not just one step in this, you've made 2 steps. Some people it takes many years. Everybody takes many years to make one step. The second step is you do realize there was a price. You didn't have any choice, you paid it. You first realize I seem to have gained so-and-so. The next step, if you ever get there, is, boy, jump back to binary reality. Have you seen the way the bicep on my right arm has expanded? And if you continue long enough, one day you happen to, in a strange way, try and look in the mirror, and the bicep on your left arm resembles a straw. or your thighs have gone down to the sizes of pencils. This is all an exaggeration, right? But this could not be. That's not fair. Well, it was from the late so-called Dark Ages. There was another. It came from one of the second, if I recall correctly, the second houses of the Franks that really began to stabilize the greater part of northern Europe. And the motto of that house, that royal house, was FF. Which some of you may know means fuck fairness. But at least you laugh and be cynical. I suggest that that kind of thinking is partly what made France the great country it is today. Makes us all one and all proud to be croakers. But I just thought you might find it interesting, if you had never heard of a Virgo, that everybody's life had a price. And if you're going to take this other person's life, there is an accepted price to be paid. It was based upon their social position, their worth. They had a value, and the value of everybody in that community, in that fiefdom, in that dukedom. Everyone's life was not of the same value. Fair is fair, other than among the Franks. I guess from one viewpoint, I shouldn't bring up such matters, because then you could be left. Some of you trinary smart alecks could think, well, all right, if there's real validity in this, then that should be taken into account before I take any further action. Except that's not possible. But at least we killed a few minutes. Had something else to talk about. I brought some of the questions I was going to use. Let's see which ones I pulled out. When you say the world is not going downhill but going uphill, I've said more or less that. Isn't this based on a binary map? Without a doubt. Anything you say verbally, until I get into these convoluted areas wherein it begins to make one's ordinary head hurt, you can say that there is a binary limitation and basis to all verbiage. You shouldn't forget that. That is only not true if you can go in the dictionary and look up one word and define it without going through the whole dictionary. If you can do that, if you can find a place in you that you can do that, then we're beyond the limitations of the binary world. Or if that seems too time-consuming, if you can tell me what you're going to say next. All of that notwithstanding, isn't this based on a binary map? Yes. Could life, that is, be going in both directions at once, that is, up and down, or go off at right angles to either direction? Yes, yes, yes. It's absolutely correct. And if you recall, I continually, well, I do it each and every time, I've done it enough that those of you who've been around a while, I will say things such as, based upon the two possibilities. And I'll be talking about progress or involution, the apparent progress or apparent involution. The apparent battle or question between what's affecting and directing human life, heredity or the environment. And I very often, when I get into such areas, I'll say, all right, based upon those two possibilities, which to ordinary yellow circuit consciousness, that is it. That all right, things everywhere are either progressing or they're going backwards. Staying still is not somebody, some quadrupled ordinary smart aleck, I guess, could sit and claim, all right, there are instances where things are just stale. Again, you're left with this. If there are such occurrences going on, which I'm not saying they're not taken into account. You would have to be operating in trinary consciousness. They're just areas that are of no interest to you in particular. If they were stale across the whole spectrum affecting humanity, none of humanity would want to talk about it. If it is worth talking about, if it is worthy of any interest, then it always fits into one of two things. Either it's going up, it's going down. It's either good, it's either bad. It's either profitable to us or me individually, or it's unprofitable. That is why I very often will say, all right, given those two possibilities, there is no such thing as involution. Given the two possibilities on the so-called eternal question of environment versus our heredity, given those two possibilities, there is in fact no environment. What appears to be your environment is everybody else's heredity. What appears to be their environment is your heredity. Given those two possibilities, there is no such thing as heredity. That is not an absolute statement of fact, as I keep pointing out to you, because that still is only taking into consideration two possibilities, which is all the verbiage will do, not getting into those strange areas that I am wont to sail into, and that some of you have flown off on your own, and you understand the limitations of what you can talk about. So for me to say that things are not involuting, that things are not going downhill, they're always going uphill. All right, based upon the possibility that things are either going uphill or downhill, then there is no downhill. In that same way, you can take ordinary consciousness if you could just expand it laterally and hold it enough to look at history, look at you, look at everything. And the doomsayers have got no basis for it. But there's some part of life that says that. And there's some part of life, remember, having its own partnership, is life does step in shit. Life does go, hey, let's try so-and-so. Now, in human terms, as I said, it may take years or decades that apparently humanity straightened itself out on another level. The possibility of life's own partnership is life says, well, what would happen if I did so-and-so? And it may stop and go to the bathroom, it may smoke a cigarette, and it may get back around and go, nah, never mind that. Or it may just be a spur-of-the-moment thing to life, and it's short-term memory, and it may say, what would happen if I do so-and-so? And then the phone rings and life walks off, and in 10 minutes, life has forgotten about it. And it, of course, may take 10 years here. On that basis, if you could get beyond the limitations of the binary world, then it's not absolutely true that there is no false steps. That's not true. But to say, on the basis of two possibilities, that life is either progressing or regressing, it can't regress. Because that's the two possibilities. There is no such thing. It's an illusion. All of that is true, if you can keep that in mind. Life is not going downhill. There is no evil. There is no environment, based upon those two possibilities. But that is not the final statement. That is not the reality of it. But if someone just said down here in the partnership corner, it's good enough for me. You'll find that in the hymnal on page 217. You all remember that? It's better than anything else you ever had, if you could just remember that. Could it be that the difference between long-term and short-term memory has to do with the degree of involvement of the blue circuit? I assume everyone remembers from last week, was it not, that I read the question that someone was posing, the possibility of asking me, could the difference between long and short-term memory be the basis of that which someone understands? And then I asked you, could you see on that basis the possibility that understanding, if we said that long-term memory equals understanding, then you see the possibility then that understanding would equal the need to know. So let's up the stakes. Since somebody asked this other question about could it be with the involvement of the blue circuit. Well, let's be more specific. When it gets into the passions of man, instead of just saying the blue circuit as a thing, let's take more of a verbal approach and say it would be as interest because that's the only thing that you would be passionate about, you individually, all people individually. That's the only way in which your particular blue circuits seem to work, is you've got to have some interest, whether it be positive or negative. You've got to have interest. So, going from last week, if you followed the possibility, based on a question last week and now a new one, long-term memory could equal understanding. Then understanding could equal the need to know. Now up to date. Could you then see the possibility the need to know equals interest? Now how about all the questions I still get that I mentioned again last week of how can I move faster? Let me speak for all the real good smart alecks. The fictitious, reasonably insane smart alecks, though, as I keep saying things like this and pointing it out, if this is indeed, apparently, a closed system, how can you increase your interest? It sounds good. I throw it out and say, well, what you've got to do is increase your need to know. Make yourself need more. And people write it down. People look seriously. I've done it for years, variations of it. And people go, by God, that's true. You ask me, how can you work harder? There's something you can work harder at this. Well, let's don't go into that. You've got to be able to work harder, right? Or how would we be here? All right, I got to do better. How can I do better? And then I say something along the lines where I do it poetically, allegorically, or do I just state in some way? Or give you a rhetorical question. Hey, all right, if you're going to get more, what if you made yourself hungrier, made yourself need more? And it sounds real good. How you going to make yourself need more? Well, you can make yourself hungrier. Get down to the red circuit, good biological level. Whatever you're doing now, whatever type of physical work, whatever kind of exercise, increase it, and you make yourself hungrier. You have to eat more, even when inside a closed system. You have to take some more of the apparently out there and put it in you. So you can certainly make yourself hungrier on the blue level, I mean the red level. Could you make yourself hungrier on the blue level? Could you make yourself have a bigger interest hunger? Yeah, but you may have to kill somebody. And then you got to take into consideration the word go. No, you don't have to. Worry about that later. Shoot the bastard. It's what you're going to do anyway if you do anything. We'll worry about paying it off later, right? Right, right. Would one's age have anything to do with the developmental process or stage that one finds oneself in this? Does age have a direct influence on activity in this? I hate to tell you, but yeah, it do. Your sex has something to do with it, your age, your height, your weight. And I'm not trying to escape the question, because age has probably as strong as any besides sex. Age has a direct effect on it, no doubt. And I could say that everyone comes into this at an awkward age. They do. Some of you I met when you were 20, some of you I met when you were 30, some of you I met when you were maybe even a little younger or a little older. But in every case, you were at an awkward age. You should be able to feel that. You were. It was your awkward age. It was not the best time in the world, other than the fact it was the only time in the world. Things will get apparently better just with age. Even here, things will apparently get better for you, just being here and aging in it. I can't promise you'll have the same horizontal success that Jack Daniels does by aging in barrels. But to some degree, you'll get a little more mellow. I don't know whether you'll turn that kind of charcoal, that amber color, unless you get some new form of hepatitis, I guess. Age has, back to the question, age has a real effect. if any of you had ever thought of such questions, and the person who wrote that, if you were asking on some sort of basis, I'll try and second and third guess a few possibilities, that if any of you feel as though, because of your age, whatever it is, that some of the people around you in this, that you feel as though, wait, if I were as old as they are, I believe it'd be easier. Or conversely, some of you might think, wait, if I could go back, if I'd got involved with this and I was as young as that person here, I believe I would be doing better. That's on the basis you feel that somebody else here is, quote, doing better, having it easier, seeing more, making more, quote, progress. It's because you got into this at an awkward age. But it has an effect, a direct effect. There's no doubt about it. Are perfection and obsolescence equivalent? That's a good one. All right, perfection. Let's say, because this is fair, perfection would have to equal or have to mean totally acceptable, right? That would be perfection. That is an honest, even binarily honest description of perfection. All right. If perfection equals that which is totally acceptable, then perfection is always too late and obsolete. Always. No exception, no way out. And that is why just enough is never enough for the few. That's why no matter who you shoot, no matter who you kill, it's never enough. I thought if I overcame this and was able to pay it off, well, never mind all that war-gill stuff. Worry about that when you get there. I thought if I could just overcome this, I just felt sure if I could ever give up such and such habit, I felt sure if I ever got over my temper, I could just feel it. I remember as long as I've been here, for the last number of months, years, I knew without any doubt that my temper had to be the main place. My foot was nailed down. I was stuck in one spot. I just knew that if I in some way could overcome my temper, certain forms of prejudice, hatred I had, aggression, I could just feel that that was like a wall, and behind there was all this great understanding, all this compassion, all this progress, just back there dancing on those little toes, just waiting to overtake me. And sure enough, you turn around one day, and it's like that particular form of aggression you seem to have outgrown, you seem to have overcome. You seem to now be stronger than that. It's no longer a problem. And that was what you dreamed. If I could give up that one thing, it would all be over. But just enough is never enough for the few. Now, to the ordinary, to the many, they cannot see that what they're calling perfection would always be too late and obsolete. It would always be behind the times. But can you see how life uses that with ordinary people? Somebody in the partnership corner just held up their watch. And they said time had run out. Of course, knowing the kind of people in the partnership corner, I